All right, guys, I've got another fantastic guest for you guys today. Paul, introduce yourself, my man.
Hi, I'm Paul Maurer from Wisconsin. I'm a chiropractor and lifelong runner. And well, what else do you need to know?
And an author as well.
Yes, I know that's why
Yeah.
we're talking today. I did write a book.
Yeah, you wrote a few
Um,
books. Yeah.
yes, yeah, we could talk about that. The one you're interested in is my latest one that does revolve around running, and it is a novel
Yeah.
called The Unforgiving Line.
Yes.
And you read it, and we got in touch, and here we are.
Oh,
So.
yeah. Well, it's a beautiful book. I got it right here. And yeah, I loved it, man. When I first received it in the mail, I'm not gonna lie, I took a look at the cover and thought, oh, okay, like maybe, maybe a nothing against it, but maybe a self-published book, kind of a cheesy stock photo of the shoes on the front. But then as I read the book, these shoes were an important part of the book. So
Yeah,
this
it's actually
picture
more of a
is very fitting to the book and just made the picture look that much cooler to me anyways.
We can
But
talk about those actual shoes later if you like. So
oh,
that,
sweet. Okay, I
yeah.
figured there was a story behind it all. So as every writer has many stories. Um, so you're from Wisconsin and you're a lifelong runner. So you grew up in the Milwaukee area, right?
Yes, I have a
Okay.
suburb called Greendale, but south side of Milwaukee. I've lived here quite a bit of my life, but I did spend a few years out in Arizona, briefly San Diego in my youth, wayward. One of my son calls it my lost year when I was kind of bouncing around a little bit when I was really young. And I went to school in Minnesota, but primarily Wisconsin.
Okay. Okay. And how long have you been running?
Well, boy, freshman year, before freshman year cross country. So I'm
Okay.
61, so that's 47 years doing the math.
Nice. Nice.
I never really have stopped. I mean, as you get older, things change a little bit as far as the ability,
Of course.
the miles you can put on you, and I segued into other things like cycling and things like that. But running has always been the cornerstone of my activity and my
Yeah.
competition. So.
Yeah. Okay. Why running? Did you just fall in love with it immediately, or what was it about running for you that really
Yeah,
caught you?
I did fall in love with it immediately, but partly I was very small and I loved all the major sports. I wanted to play baseball, football, basketball. But I was started high school. I was 88 pounds,
Mm.
literally 5 foot tall. I really didn't even grow through high school. I graduated at 105 pounds. I was really the smallest kid in school, which wasn't the best of times, I'll be quite
Okay.
honest. But I could compete in running.
Yeah.
That doesn't always have a size barrier there, even though it was hard being, growing late. And I couldn't really compete in the other sports. So it was always, cross country, track, and then as I grew, kept running through the rest of my life because it just became kind of part of me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And you're still running these days?
yeah, I did. Yeah. I don't want to talk big miles, but I ran about 6 miler yesterday. I'll
Nice.
still. There hasn't been so many races. Obviously, they're starting up again. So I did a 10K a bit ago, kind of in the woods a bit. Like doing duathlons and things. The riding also. So
Uh,
so I mix it up. I just kind of alternate days. Almost seems to work better for me. That I can it just seems to work better for me all these days with my body and such. So.
yeah. Well, it sounds like you're still competing too if you're jumping into these races. Are you still doing marathons or?
I thought about one last year, and then obviously pandemic a year and a half ago. I don't know if a knee would handle it right now. That's
Okay.
I
Okay.
hate to sound like an old man, but
Yeah.
but there's a reality there sometimes. I did a half, I don't know, 2 years ago or so, and I was a little beat up for a week, limping around. My wife doesn't think that's real smart of me when you're kind of so I'm not sure. I'd like to, and I haven't done a ton of marathons. I got late into long distance like that in my 30s, late 30s, and did a handful of them. And since then, you get in the life gets in the way with the kids and marriage. Not in the way, but involved. Work and everything. So I never stopped running. Haven't done a marathon in a while, so it's probably been 10 to 15 years. So.
Yeah. Yeah. You said you discovered long distance stuff in your 30s. So did you run collegiately, like competitively, and then kind of fall out of it for a couple years and then find marathoning, or what was it like for you?
Sure. I made, well, somewhat of a, I won't say I call it a mistake, but I went to UW Madison,
Mm.
and that's really where the big boys run. In order to run at college there, those guys are all Americans.
Legit.
To be just a good local runner at the time, I couldn't have competed with that level. And I look back and wished I would have gone to a D2 3 type school. I could have competed there, but going to Madison, which was everybody in my family kind of went to Madison. I did too. So really, I just ran on my own up there. And, I do road races and all those types of things. Or you go on a 2 hour run around Lake Monona, which is 20 miles or something like that. And really always on my own, single, never a solo runner, never trained, never really had a group coach, anything like that. And so when I moved out to Arizona and after college, my first degree, and did compete on a running club, the running team through a store, small sponsorship, and just 5, 10Ks, things like that. Mediocre success because I never really had the leg speed for the 10K thing, which was a big thing at the time. Find out these guys can go out in 4:30, and when that's your max, it doesn't work real well. So that kind of thing. So I wished I would have extended the distance, but at the time it was all, again, 5, 10Ks was the thing that we all did. So, and I didn't think about longer things like ultras. I just never did. Never bumped into people that did it. Never really knew much about it. So maybe missed a little bit of calling there, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah, for sure. So when did writing come into the picture for you? You didn't go to school for writing, from what I understand. I think you have a business degree and you're a chiropractor by trade. So you kind of taught yourself to write, if I understand that right.
Yeah. Short story to get me started. I do have 3 boys, and I was always the get them to bed. At least, we take turns, of course, and I would tell stories. And I still remember specifically telling some story to my son, made it up, just something out of the blue. And I think it was about some planet and some aliens, etc. And it ended up really cool. And I remember him a night or two later saying, "Tell me that one about the planet." And I couldn't remember it. And he flat out said, "Dad, you need to start writing things down." And I thought, yeah, I guess you're kind of right, because it was a good story, but I couldn't remember for the life of me. So I started kind of doing really silly things. My first short story was called Frogzilla, about a giant frog. That my boyhood story, catching these big frogs I used to like to catch. And from there on, I started to do longer things, so some poetry, some at times song lyrics, and then eventually segued into my first novel in 2006 issue. So I put that one out.
2006. Okay.
Yeah.
And so when was the first short story, Frogzilla?
That would have been a few years before that, I believe, early
Okay.
2000s.
Okay.
And as you kind of mentioned, I really didn't have any specific training. I did take literature courses like everybody in college, but I never had any real clear-cut, classes or advanced training. So self-taught in the sense I started reading some books. There really wasn't, maybe there was things online, but I wasn't always savvy into that. Did take some night classes like adult learning through extensions in the university here to get critiqued. You had to write stories or whatever it was for that assignment for that week, online type training like that. But mostly probably just doing and reading, of course, and you start seeing patterns of literature you like and how people create stories and subplots and things like that. So it was more or less just learning by doing and being self-coached in a sense. Running, it was all the mistakes. I look back and see some crap that I wrote. It's sort of like your first marathon where things don't go so well or something.
Totally.
Until you maybe tweak it out and figure out why did I screw up, or how can I get better? So really just more through doing, I think, is how I got better.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you always been a reader? Have you always been a fan of literature?
Yeah, I go in streaks, right? When I grew up, it was a lot of Stephen King type things. Even earlier than that, it was like sports, very like boyhood sports novels. There was writers that would put out, about baseball players and things like that. Right now, some nonfiction, sometimes running related. Just finished Billy Rogers. Well, he's been a long time, but his Marathon Man book. So I go in streaks of reading. I'm doing more listening. I listen to a lot of music, and I try to get even the song lyrics influence me, or some of the phrasing and things like that. So different ways I feel that I sort of get a creative motivation or thought flow, the process going in my head. So
Yep. Yeah, no, I'm the same way, man. Like I'll get inspiration from a song I'm listening to, or a movie I'm watching, or a random book that doesn't have anything to do with what I'm trying to convey in my own writing, or the inspiration comes from all over the place. And when you're writing a book, for me anyways, it's all encompassing. Like your world is kind of revolving around this process of writing this book, and inspiration is coming from all different places, from a conversation you overhear at a coffee shop, or
Oh, exactly.
just
Yep.
all over the place, and you're just jotting it down, and it's like, oh, this is going to have to go in. I know exactly where this is going to go. Is it very all encompassing and sort of methodical for you in that sense?
Yeah, like you said, the motivation, it's funny, even when I'm running or biking, there are many times that I'll have a phrase that pops in my head, and I may have my phone with me, but I just repeat it 10 times till I remember it, because it's just a phrase that I really liked, or an image that I had in my head of something I saw, or even a little snippet of a song lyric that just clicked, like, wow, that was beautiful, and so it's really hard to know when it's going to come, because sometimes you get, I won't say stuck, but it's easier other times to create. So I just got to kind of go with the flow. I'm not always sure when it's going to happen. Often it's when I am aerobically active. I'm
Mm.
daydreaming the subconscious, and boom, so maybe some plot piece that I really hadn't figured out. Like, oh man, that would be really cool. I'm not consciously thinking about it, but it's there. It's in the back, kind of percolating away or something. So it's kind of interesting how I don't know how the muse works, but it just does somehow.
Yeah, it's a
So
mystery.
yeah,
You just have to honor it whenever it does come. It's like,
yeah.
okay, thank you. I'm going to use this. And
Yeah, so I run home and write it down or something before, and I hope I can read my scribble later on of what I wrote down.
exactly,
So
exactly.
yeah.
So when you first started writing your first book, what was that
hmm
process like? Did you know from the beginning, I'm setting out to write a book? Did you have the storyline set? Or was it just like my first book was kind of a mess. I had written
hmm
down all kinds of stuff in journals, first person, third person, all sorts of different angles and different variations. And eventually was just like, okay, once I had all these notebooks full, it's like, okay, there's a story in here somewhere.
hmm
It's like chipping away at the stone to make something beautiful, So what was your first book like in the process? And I'm assuming you were just writing it at night, like between
Right.
jobs, between your family life. But what was it
Yep.
like?
Yeah, I can still remember I did a lot, just even in notebooks, just again, scribbles. My kids would be at soccer games, and I'd be in the corner, between games, or just running around, screwing around, and I'm in the corner like a loser, just writing things in my notebook. I don't want to sound like I'm always in the same, niche, but it was also a running novel called The Gift, a Runner Story, and the other four in between are totally different than that. But I wanted many years ago, like many of us that, if you read some running novels, John Parker's book, Once a Runner,
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah,
kind of the
yeah.
cornerstone of, people always say that's the best novel, running novel. I read that, I don't even know when, it must have been 70s, early 80s. And when I started running, I thought I wanted to give back something and do something about running. And this was about a collegiate runner had some personal difficulties. I didn't really ever have a exact plot line of how it was going to go, but I did entwine, like, Steve Prefontaine was still a big influence, still is, I suppose.
Mhm.
So he's entwined in the story some of his quotes and things. And it's set in Milwaukee, which I do base most of what I write kind of on what I can see, where I've been, where
Mhm.
I can visualize it in my head. Um, and that's funny that I consider that my infant work, my starting point. And I look back, and it has parts that I think are really good, but I look back and I've gotten better. But it did sell quite well. Let's Run had it on their title page there. Weldon Johnson liked it quite a bit, and he gave a nice review, and that got it out to the masses. And so I sold a moderate amount of this self-published book,
Nice.
even though, again, I think everyone's gotten better along the way, but that was starting point of even learning how to do it.
Yeah.
And I do remember, I think I thought it was done at 30,000 words, which a novel is usually 80,000
Mhm.
words.
Mhm.
And I was thinking, what the hell? This is like peanuts. This is not a full thing. So I kept working and developing and adding layers and characters and things. So again, I kind of ground through that one without having really the understanding of what it took, or how to do it correctly. So, but it stood up to some quotes I still see out there as far as used from that book, which is kind of funny. I'll see it in different countries, that there's a certain paragraph that has been used quite often for
Oh, no
motivation.
kidding.
So
Okay.
I'll see it in different places. So,
Yeah. Well,
and from there, I
that's
did some other things too. And so whatever it is, that's 14 years later, another, my sixth, I guess. So
yeah, yeah. Well,
yeah.
that's pretty awesome. And I definitely heard the inspiration from Once a Runner from James Parker in the
Mhm,
book. I could see
mhm,
the influence there. Um, you know, it's funny when I read your latest book, The Unforgiving Line. I was really touched by it, but just looking back on all the books that I've read, there's a few different influences that I heard sort of infused into the book. And
Hmm.
I don't even know if you've read these books, but I wanted to run them by
No,
you to see if you've ever heard these guys. So one was Once a Runner by James Parker, which obviously you've read that one. Have you
yeah.
ever read The Willow Tree by Hubert Selby Jr.?
No, I have
Okay.
not.
Okay. You might have to put that on your
The
list
Willow
because
Tree.
the
Okay.
Willow Tree. Yeah. And then The Journey of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman.
I recognize the title, but no, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I keep
Okay.
striking out. You're gonna.
No, no, that's actually cool because I like it when it's like, okay, it sounds like this guy was influenced by this, this, and this, and
Hmm.
then he goes, I've never heard those guys. You know,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
oh, he does have an original, cool style. So it's
Hmm.
actually kind of cooler that you didn't hear of these guys.
Okay.
But
I don't want to plagiarize, so.
no, no, no plagiarism at all. But there's sort of the timeless story of, you know, the older gentleman teaching the younger man the ways, you know, and in this
Hmm.
book, it's through running. And, you know, that story has been told through many different genres and, you know, Star Wars and just a bunch of different ones out there. With this book, what made you settle on that particular story?
Well, because as you mentioned, I do have a older influence. I I think I see myself in both characters. Mac is the older runner that had a failed youth. He had some success, but at a moment of potential glory, he failed. And I never really had that particular moment, but I look back and you have regrets of things you wish you would have done and things you wish you would have known at the time. And you look back and you have more wisdom. And DJ, the younger runner, in a sense, is partly me, a stubborn-headed younger runner. Again, I didn't have his talent, but I was very stubborn. I can do this myself. I don't need coaching. I'll just keep grinding out miles and I'll get better. And before I know it, I was always injured or coming back from injury or something like that. So it's kind of a blending of maybe two pieces of my life. And it doesn't mean that everything either character says is you, because that makes me people think you're nuts or something if you
Yeah,
put just
right.
but they're elements of you, the older and the youth, and you know, trying to teach, or maybe, and I even wanted to write for younger runners in a sense that maybe they would get some perspective and things too from an older wizened veteran. And I was able to draw on some of the past history of distance running within the book, and because the older character could bring that into his teaching, if you will, or coaching of the
Mhm,
younger runner.
mhm,
So
mhm.
so it's just kind of blending generations of runners, the old school guys who really seem to like the book, and the younger, you know, younger runner was currently like a high schooler.
Yeah, yeah.
So
When you sit down to put pen to paper, um, why did you decide um, I guess for me, when I started writing, it was really easy for me to write in the first person, to talk about my own
mhm.
experiences from the past. Why did you decide against that? Like, why did you sit down and decide, I want to make up this fictional character and sort of build a world for him rather than writing about your own experiences? Because it sounds like you've had a bunch.
Yeah, as far as the person, each book that I've written, it just sort of naturally flows from what perspective, and I don't know. I think they're all a little bit different. I do have one before this was more first person, and it just seems like somehow either any particular style may work for what I'm trying to say, and I don't. I guess I constantly have to choose, but it just sort of, when I start writing, it just sort of comes out from a perspective, and so that just, I don't know, it just happens naturally somehow. I don't know if that really answered the
Yeah,
question,
yeah.
but
No, I get it.
uh, yeah, and you know, when I start these stories, it isn't. I don't always have a concrete uh, pathway in line as far as what exactly the story is going to involve. I just have sort of sometimes a character, a torture, a wounded character in emotionally whatever it is, and start. And sometimes I'm surprised where it takes me sometimes. And that's
Mm.
another style. Some folks plan a whole book, and that's fine. That's great for them. A, B, Z, D, all the different chapters and characters written down and what the characters are. I don't tend to function that way real well. I have to let it just kind of develop. And then sometimes I'm surprised a character might be different than I probably thought he might be. So I just kind of let it
That's
flow
yeah,
more, you know.
that's sort of a
So
special moment though, when this character just sort of builds itself into something that you weren't necessarily planning on. So is for you personally, is there a lot of rewrites? Do you go through a lot of drafts?
oh heck yeah.
Yeah.
um it's funny because when you're writing, there are different elements of it. And sometimes it is actually creating of the new word, the new sentences. And sometimes you have to be in a zone that I'm in a creative mode to do that. And that I'm not too tired or had a rough day, or that I just feel like I got something in my head I got to get out. Sometimes it's just completely rewriting. So I probably, I don't know, spent, I'm sure, hundreds of hours on rewrites, each breaking down each sentence. And omit needless words is a a famous phrase where you're just getting rid of an extra word that makes it seem longer, or a small phrase. And so deleting things to make it more concrete and crisper writing. So, and it's a weird thing. I do like rewriting, which I was talking to someone else that writes that he hates it. And I really don't. Somehow I can sit there and just cross out words and make it what I think is a little better. You do it 10 times and maybe it's the best it's going to get. So I couldn't even estimate how many hours I would probably put in rewriting or proofing. Maybe is another, kind of a concept. Same concept, I guess. But
yeah.
So,
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
So are all of your books self-published?
No, I have 2 by a small publisher. It's out west. Honestly, I wasn't real happy with, well, let me backtrack a little bit. To get into the big houses, literary houses, I did work with them. I was always projecting, try to get agents in my first book or two. And I had a couple of bites on different things that were real close, and they went to the third person in the literary firm, and they were going to approve it or reject it, and then they rejected it. That's how you get into the big houses, to get, the bigger publishers. I found out most of those things, they want a little more of a pop presence, that, in a sense, not always, but where's the money going to come? Is it going to sell?
Right.
Where's my name? Do I have a big name as an author? And typically, no, I didn't have that. So I ended up finding out this small company that I could do most of what they did. I wasn't real impressed, the one I worked with anyways, as far as what they did, even creating the cover, which my son helps me create my own covers. And with all the online things, you can use different formats to get your book out there and do a reasonable job. And I know sometimes it's viewed right away, self-published job must be crap. Yes and no, I guess it depends, but it is hard to get into certain houses, as I say, with a novel that might not sell 500,000 books, so that's what they want to see sometimes.
It's almost impossible nowadays. I mean, I'm surprised you got it into the hands of anybody, honestly. I mean, it's hard work that takes a lot of queries, a lot of submissions, a lot of rejections just to get anybody.
So the word, the query thing. People think, how do I get my book published by, just, you don't just send them a copy of your paper, it's a whole process, and it's so lengthy.
It's a laborious process.
Rejections.
Yes. So you've been there with the rejection thing and the frustration. It's tough. It's a tough world. And, if somebody comes along with a big Hollywood name like Paris Hilton, well, of course we want to publish your book. It doesn't matter if you're a good writer, like it's going to sell, right?
Doesn't that make you not furious, but just like, this is
no,
bullshit.
It kind of does. It kind of does. Yeah, totally. I mean, you understand the publishing world when something like that happens. It's like, okay, this is going to sell everywhere. It's going to make $1 million bucks, and she's not a writer. She's not passionate about writing. And she's probably got somebody doing all of her writing for her. And
right.
It's
not always that way, but there is certainly a percent. And that's, I guess I got tired of even the length. I wanted to get things out, and I know it can take months and then years before you even can get somewhere. And I felt I was able to do this, enough on my own, that partly I just wanted to produce it and finalize it. And from A to Z, I guess I basically did the whole thing. So that gives a sense of success there too, just doing it. So,
Yep. I totally get you.
My
100%.
stubbornness comes back again. So,
dude, same here, 100%. And self-publishing is kind of losing the stigma that it carried around with it for a while there, because at first it was like, I just want to get my book out. I quote unquote almost don't even care if it's good. I just want to get my book out, but nowadays big writers are self-publishing because they're just bypassing the middmain there. They're just selling it on their own. They upload it to Amazon and they can sell it on their own, and they're making 100% of the money. They're not making, if you publish with a big publishing house, you're making what, 10% of the money, and the rest of the money is going to agents and the publisher. And they want you to go do a book tour and all that stuff. It's just, it's a headache. So a lot of people are going the self-publishing route nowadays, and it's more and more respected, I think. Yeah, man. So, but yeah, just a beautiful book, man. I really enjoyed it from start to finish. Let's see, what else can I ask you? Your writing process, please tell me about your writing process. Do you write in the mornings, the evenings? Do you start writing on paper and then put it into a computer, or what's that process like for you?
I tend to have sweet spots more writing at night. I have three boys and they're pretty much out of the house now, and married with my wife, Sue. She tends to go to bed a little earlier than me. She gets up earlier. So I'll have this when I'm really rolling 9 to 11 or kind of a couple hours at night that I will dedicate towards it. And that cuts a little streaky, as I said. The energy's got to be there, and other things in the way. But it's usually typically that kind of night writing. I can find time. Don't tell my employers, but lunch, I mean, lunch or breaks, and it may even be just jotting down a few sentences, or at times there's research. For this one, I had to use some history of running involved. So there's, again, I'm kind of herky jerky. I know I've read books for people that get up at, they talk about how to write, and they'll get up 4 a.m, get the pot of coffee going, and 4 to 6 is their writing time. I'm not dedicated that way. I'm consistent in a sense that when I'm really on a project, that get at it, but not locked in. I guess that's because my life's not set up that way. I'm not a professional writer. That's all I have to do, or just getting up that early to do it. I tend to do it late in the evenings, weekends, same thing. If I'm stay up too late, just kind of cranking things out. Laptop typically. Again, I used to do it. The early days was a notebook, and I'd have some scrawls in there and try to read my own handwriting. But now it's pretty much just laptop, just going. This book is funny, a little story, because I did have it initially on like a flash drive, and I didn't save quite a bit of it. And then I took the flash drive up north. I was going to write, and I lost it. It fell out of my pocket or something.
Oh, no
So
way.
I had literally 20,000 words on it, and I lost really all of it. And I think I put it aside for months and didn't pick it up, because I just was like, I can't do this. I screwed up,
Yeah.
And so obviously now I save a little better and don't do it that way. But that was a pretty stupid error on my part. But I remember looking for that thing. My sister is looking for weeks to try to find it, and just so.
I've made that error. That error
Have
is
ya?
horrible. Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
for me, it was like losing a child. I was like, oh, it's gone. There's no way I could ever reproduce it. There's no
Yes.
way,
Yeah. And I don't remember exactly, again, because I don't have the initial version, but I think started fresh, and maybe it turns out that it's better than what I would have done. So sometimes you got to start over. And again, I have some things that I've started that sort of hit a wall a little bit, that it just didn't flow anymore, and I wasn't sure it was worth it, or I lost the passion. So, sometimes restarting may not be a bad thing. It's emotionally hard because you felt like you wasted time or something, but yeah, I don't know. You got to grind through it. It's just like, again, a bad race. You can't quit running. You just got to regroup, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, is the perseverance.
Yeah.
So when you started this book, did you have the concept of Mac and DJ, the older gentleman, the younger kid, and running as kind of the bridge between them? Was that sort of the impetus for this, or how did it start for you in your head?
Yeah. We went back to, John Parker's book. Over the years, I always wanted to write better than my first running novel, even though I'd done, 4 things in between. I wanted to write in my mind what I could craft as my best work, and without sounding egotistical, I wanted somebody to say, that's it on par. It's in that ballpark or something. John Parker, and I have gotten reviews that have more than once said they even liked it more than Parker's. Again, that's a different era writing, and his was 70s, mine more modern times. But so it was always about. I think it's generated in my head, I bounced around ideas about the generations of writing for years, until I finally said, I got to get this done. I got to do this one. I kind of alluded to this before, that running has helped me so much on every level, physical and mental health, and all these positive things that we get from it. I wanted to sort of give back to running a little bit of my own small little world, that how much I appreciated it and how much it meant to me. So the characters, like I say, DJ comes from a Chicago kind of a mixed race marriage, and a troubled kid. Current state of the world, it isn't really a racially motivated book, but I wanted to blend that. He moves up north, and he's a little bit fish out of water, And again, a couple of my books are based up north, Wisconsin. I wanted to use that as scenario because I mean that it's a different world up there, and I think from that area, different areas, you can maybe visualize it how it would be different for a city kid to move up north and try to fit into the world. That's, we all have trouble with that in some part of our life, probably fitting in. And I wanted to use that fish out of water type theme, and with running as maybe some salvation for him and the older runner too, to have some redemption and forgiveness of himself for his own failures, the older character. So guess that rambled there, but yeah, like I say, sometimes it was just two characters in my mind, and there we go. I start writing and see where it takes me, or that storyline in a sense. So I know the ending. I did have a rough idea about the ending because that for different reasons, I won't give that away. But that one I had a little bit of an idea at the end as far as the very last few pages, how I might wrap it up a little bit. So but I didn't know 78,000 words in between.
Yeah, right. Right.
So
without giving the ending away, I will say I was pretty much on the edge of my seat as I was reading it. Like, I think I almost broke a sweat. So
good.
And that's where you want your reader to be. So the ending definitely did what it was supposed to do. Do you remember when you sat down in the very beginning process of this book, and like what the first scene of the book was that you wrote, or like what the first few words were?
We talked before. I think when I started it, the first few words I mentioned a bloodshot moon, and I can remember that's out of a Tom Waits song he was singing at one point.
I almost called it. I almost said that. Yes,
I should have waited.
I love Tom Waits. No. Yeah, grapefruit moon, bloodshot moon. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
and I remember that. What a beautiful kind of contrast in good and bad, light and darkness. And so this gentleman, my Mac, I had him at night walking and kind of just roughly bumps into the other runner. So it was just sort of a chance meeting that their worlds had collided in a sort of a strange way, running in the starlight and up north kind of a thing. And they didn't really talk more than a few words. It was just a little chance meeting, but it jarred the older runner, his memories of his youth that he never quite overcame. And I did alternate perspectives each chapter. If you can see that from perspective of the older, the younger. And so you I hope you can get inside both heads and understand where they're coming from, their motivations, their past, their angst, their anger, their success, failures, broken homes, whatever it might be. So I like I said, just took it there, just the two on a lonely road and up north, and worlds collide and see what happens.
Wow. So, that's cool. From a writer's point of view, or like, I'm kind of an armchair writer. From a wannabe writer's point of view, like I just geek out on that stuff, and I just love the fact that was how you started it in your mind. That was where it started, because it's pretty much the beginning of the book, but it's that's beautiful, man. That's the stuff I geek out on. So I love it, man. I love it.
Well, not to interrupt you, but just the same concept. The one book I really loved reading about writing was called On Writing by Stephen King.
Oh,
he writes a wonderful book about, he did not like people that are kind of, like I said before, had note cards. And again, not being critical, but it's sort of letting the story develop. And that's how I always, for me, worked. And I felt like I was doing it wrong because other books I read said, you should do this, and I'm doing this, where I just let it kind of flow. But his book is exactly opposite. Just let the characters develop, and they'll take you places you never thought they'd go. So he's got a really cool book on. I think I've read that 5 or 6 times as far as validating at least the way it works for me. And again, that's the bottom line. You got to figure out how it works, how you can make things, how you can create on your own. Yeah. So that's a part of the writing process. I'd recommend someone looking at that if they want to at least get an idea about how to create, I guess, how to say it.
Yeah. It's a great book. And it's included in that book, Stephen King's story about how he was writing the story Carrie and decided to throw it away. And his wife came in and picked it out of the garbage and read it and said, look, you got to do something with this. And eventually it was a book, then a movie, and on went his career. So
that's interesting. I remember that piece. That's funny.
That's crazy.
Never know. I haven't gotten a Carrie type book out there yet, but that'd be nice. Maybe I'll be surprised.
So. As someone who's sort of self-taught, were there a lot of doubts in your head? Were there a lot of times you said, man, this is silly. I'm a chiropractor. I have another life to live. Maybe I should just hang this thing up. Or were your sights set on this thing?
Yeah, I never, I'd have moments where you stop for a bit, a day, a week or something, but I never really doubted I would finish this. because I said, is in my mind for years that I'd wanted to write my best running oriented novel, even though I think there's other elements here as far as family and other, things that I entwine in there. So I never really believed I wouldn't finish it. I mean, at times I never really get writer's block, but it's just the energy or other things going on that you kind of put it on back burner.
Sure.
But that's when I would do things like proofing or looking into some other history and other runners and things like that. Or I'd work on the cover, or there's different production things that are harder, even thinking about marketing. There's always all these angles that you're doing. So I never really felt I wouldn't finish. No, I'm like a lot of runners, you're just stubborn. You're going to grind through
Gonna
it.
grind it
You do
out.
others, I have done other, there's no freaking way I'm not going to finish. It
Yeah.
may not be pretty,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you're going to get there. So,
Was it that way with your earlier books as well?
yeah, I never really thought about not finishing them. I don't know.
Okay.
Once I get started, and if I'm really committed to an idea and I think it's one that it has value and I'm passionate about, I never really had the thought process of stopping. Again, some take longer than others. Some flow a little easier. Sometimes it was a character or an event. I wrote one about it's an awful story actually in real life. Two girls in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, near me, that stood in front of a train and committed suicide. And I thought, what could drive someone to that point as a young person to do that? And so it's a little bit darker in a sense. It's a teenage type novel about one character commits suicide. So it just drove me, and I had this idea that I incorporated into a book. It was just, again, one horrible moment that somehow I wanted to write a story about that high school time frame. So young adult novel is how they phrase it. But
Mhm.
so it may just be some event or a person that I met. Another one's about a recluse up north. We used to call him what's the word we used to use? Well, I can't think of the word offhand, but he lived next door and he'd only come out at night from this little cabin. And I was a young kid and he was this freaky man that lived. And as I got older, like, what would make a guy just pull away from society,
Mhm.
and just live in this little cabin by himself?
Mhm.
And so I wrote a story about him, and he had PTSD and other problems and things like that. So it can just be an image or a person that to me is enough to kind of create a story about that person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, okay. So you live a life where you are married, you have a job, you're a chiropractor. From the outside looking in, things seem pretty good, right? But in order to write some of these darker stories, you have to have some sort of darkness in your life. And as soon as I
I'm
say
sm-
that, you smile because I think you know
well,
where I'm going. And I'm just
Well, I'm
wondering, like,
smiling, number one, because my wife says, should I get help? Is there something wrong with you?
yes, yes, exactly, exactly. And if I'm totally guessing here, but I'm guessing the writing is sort of a version of therapy for you almost.
I have to believe. Yeah.
You're getting these things out, and you're turning characters into maybe these darker places in your mind. Does that resonate? Like, is there any darkness in your life? Have you had past trauma or anything crazy like that?
Good question. And I would say not overt trauma, no.
Mhm.
And I know it sounds sad, or I don't want to sound like pity me or something, but really that high school formative years when I was this little person, this 100-pound boy with among men in a sense, even competing, but never feeling like you fit in. That was really a horrible time for me personally. And you keep so much in your head and trying to make sense of the world and not feel like you're always on the outside looking in. And that was sort of what I remember about high school. And running kind of saved me because the one thing I could do fairly well, I could compete, so that was a no-brainer to do the one thing I was good at.
Mhm.
So I think that some of the darkness was that really rough time as a youth when I grew so late, and it probably caused some anxieties and just inner turmoil kind of a thing like that I think I draw back on with some of the characters, whether it's DJ or whether it's a young adult novel, that there's some of those things. So as far as overt trauma, no, I had a wonderful raising. I come from a family of 10 kids and great parents. And
Wow.
so I would say nothing dramatic that I had. We all have internal stresses, and some was probably even self-created looking back.
Mhm.
It's just who you are. You don't know why you think the way you do at a certain time in your life, and you're trying to fit in. And even college at times, kind of not sure what direction to go.
Mhm.
I got a business degree, had no interest in it, but I was okay. I'm in business school. I guess I'll finish. So I went out to Arizona and worked a few years. was going to come back and go to medical school. All of a sudden I was going to go into sports medicine, and then I segued into chiropractic. So kind of a lost years where I really had no real foundation of who I was. So I guess that's my kind of teenage angst, or whatever, young adult angst story, until I maybe got it together in my mid-20s or whatever you want to say. So, and hopefully reasonably healthy without too much darkness. But I can draw on some characters that make them a little, I don't know, ugly or dark, and I don't know exactly where that comes from. Sometimes it's like, whoa, that's, maybe I should get therapy. I don't know.
Or maybe you should just keep writing.
And that may be it. That may be the therapy I use. I guess is what you're saying.
When you were a kid and you saw that guy who was a recluse, who just kind of lived by himself, was there a fascination with that character? It must have stuck with you in one way or another.
Yeah. I don't know why a simple thing like that would generate a story, because it is just a person, but I just remember this shadowy character, and then I think we all would lock the doors at night, as a kid, because he's going to come with an axe, or maybe your brother told you a story or something. It just scare you. So I don't know why that simple fact would create that type of a character. So, but and I did write my last novel. I biked from Wisconsin to Arizona after my first career. And so I have a story about an older person, roughly my age, who's recreating that ride, which I still want to do again, to be honest, as I wind down my career. I did a solo trip many years ago, bicycling and camping, but he had an awful life, a broken life, and multiple divorce life, and has lost connection with his son. So he's doing this bike ride to reflect on his past, and eventually comes to, again, sort of some redemption at the end when he hits this time the coast. So again, that was an experience that I actually did. So I can draw back on riding again as a youth, but looking back as an older person on the sins of youth, or whatever you want to call it. So
yeah, I find that fascinating, the way you take parts of your life and infuse that into the story, and then also you're using your imagination, you're including a lot of fiction. You can create these characters, and you can create this world, and it's all interesting, man. I geek out on all this stuff, like I said. Tell me about the red shoes on the cover of the book.
Yes. I know you mentioned initially a stock photo, and I'll say no, those are mine and my brother's from the early 1970s.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
So cool.
I've been told on Facebook, and these older runners, Adidas Tokyo is what they've told me, old spikes. So they were like, I think I probably got them in 1973. And that's a picture that I just took, and my son helps me with some of that. But me and my brothers ran in those back in the early 70s. So we left some blood and sweat in the shoes. And my brother had found them in his house. I think even my youngest brother had found them in his basement, and said, Paul, I think these initially were yours. Do you want them? I'm like, holy shit. Yeah.
Yes, I want them.
And so I incorporated them into the storyline also. So those are legit shoes that were worn way back in my day.
Wow. That's cool.
So,
and they play a cool part in the story too. So very fitting. So cool, man. How long did this book take to write?
A good 18 months, I would say, from start to finish. Maybe a tad. I think I'm including the misplaced one too, that I might have started and then restarted, sort of a thing. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but typically it's going to be a year plus for anything that I've written. Again, some go a little quicker than others, or maybe they're lengthier than others, and that sort of thing. But again, the production can take quite a while to self-publish, because you get a copy back and there's problems with it, and you're trying to figure out how to fix it because it doesn't look good. And right away, that's the first thing some people look at. Looks like crap. It's laid out wrong. There's spaces between paragraphs. There, all sorts of things to correct. So that's a mechanical thing, but that takes time too. And then you get it out, and promotion is a whole different world. If you've gotten books, that's a different animal too, trying to get a self-published book out there. But it got some nice legs on, Facebook's. I know a lot of old folks use that more than younger guys like you, but but it's really been neat, because I had sent some complimentary copies to people who knew people, but like Billy Rogers gave me a review, and Jack Foltz won Boston, Marty LaQuarrie's an Olympic, miler and sub 4 minute miler high school, to kind of hobnob or get emails from some of these guys. Billy Mills sent me an email also that he won Olympics in '64, I believe. Just some of these people that I kind of bumped in through, they enjoyed the work, and looking back at running and all that kind of thing, it kind of hit their heyday.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's been pretty cool in that regard to have some. That's been as much as fun as anything. Who the hell did I never thought I'd meet these people that are really legends, some of them in the running world.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Do you ask them for blurbs about your book?
Yeah, some I did. Some kind of came on their own because again, I would connect like Roy Perrung, who was an Ultra Hall of Fame runner. I'm not sure if you know Roy. He's 70 now, but he's in the Ultra Hall of Fame, and he knows everybody. And so he got one to Billy Rogers and a couple other people. Then one got connected with Marty LaQuarrie, and so I did send them. And at times they would send me a short note. I'd say, can I use a blurb or something? They said, and Jack Foltz from Boston, he won in '76, I believe, '77, '75, one of those. He sent a beautiful couple paragraphs put on Amazon because he just loved it. So I did have to ask for some, or they just offered them. So
yeah.
But again, that's pretty neat stuff to kind of feel like, yeah, you touched some people. So that was fun.
Totally. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Did you hire an editor for this, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, no, I did not.
Okay.
Because I feel, and again, you can be critique me if you want. I feel comfortable with me self-editing. So I really did everything myself.
Okay.
I didn't find too many. Sometimes with other books, I look back and I found a few little bumps that I should have cleaned up better. But I think I've looked at this one so much that I did not use anybody. And I'll come back again. It's sort of a stubbornness that I want to do it myself. Again, good or bad, how I live my life. I'm just maybe built that way. So I ended up just rereading and proofing so many times that I'm hoping you didn't find too many mistakes.
No, not at all. Not at all. I was just curious.
Yeah.
So did you send this to a self-publishing house, or I know a lot of people nowadays are just uploading it to Amazon and doing that process, or what was it like for you?
Well, I used Lulu Publishing.
Okay.
I used them for a couple other things too, because I knew the mechanics there. I knew how it worked. And so once I kind of figured out them, and I feel like the product came out nice as far as the quality, because I've seen other ones where the pages are falling off the back. Someone else's that was self-published, even just the binding was awful or something. I felt like they did a pretty good job, and I think they're one of the bigger ones. I know Amazon's huge; they own everything, and that's why most people can find it. Is everybody goes to Amazon to get everything. You can get it at Lulu also, but they just worked for me because that was the first one I'd done, and I knew how their machinery worked for the most part. So I stuck with them because of that. So because it can be complicated. Again, I'm not Mr. Tech, so that takes some time trying to figure that piece of the puzzle out.
It does, man. And if you're anything like me, it's like I'm good at sitting down and writing the book. Like that's for me the easy part. The hard part is finding the right publishing company or the press that's going to print it, and being my own advertiser, getting my name out. I'm not interested in any of that stuff. I just want to write. And when the writing's done, I usually have another idea brewing in my head, and I'm ready to sit down and write that one,
Right.
So
I don't know about you, but the marketing part is harder, because that's that self-promotion, pat yourself on the back. Here I am, look at me. It's an uncomfortable thing, to do that real well. I don't know, like people are going to think it sucks, but they're afraid to tell you that it sucks or something. The promotion thing is a difficult thing for that was the hardest thing for me. So I did more through online, but that's a trickier one. I never quite grasped exactly how to do that.
Me neither. And frankly, I'm not really even interested in that aspect of it either. The writer's job is to write and not be their own promoter, especially with a work of fiction. It's harder to sort of put your name out there. And like, if this was a book about you and your life and how to get fit at your age, and there's a picture of you with your shirt off on the front cover of the book, that
zero sales.
No, it's a little bit easier to come out and say, look, this is what I'm trying to do. Like,
I guess
here's my point of view. Like, if you follow these plans, you can be fit at this age. It's a little bit easier. But when you're coming out with a fiction piece saying, here's the story I made up, and like, it's just hard to promote your own stuff.
It is. I'm a lot less personality. I'm a little more of a back burner type person. I don't know. I'm not good at front and center. I don't prefer to be there.
Yeah.
I do like, sometimes I observe and just watch people, and that's how you even get creative ideas. But point being is I'm not always going to be the loudest person in the room. And some other folks they love it. That works for them, and that's
Yeah.
fine, but doesn't for me. And many
Yeah.
runners, I don't know if they're all going to be that way. Distance runners, I don't think tend to be that way.
No, I don't think
Not
so.
their nature. They're not watching the trials this week. There's sprinters, beating their chest, and the distance runners are, just walking away, trying to crawl off the track. So it's a little
Yes.
different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we can make this happen, Paul. I think that you and I have a lot of things in common. Just chatting with you for a few minutes here, it sounds like we have a lot of the same background. So all
Yeah, you're a
interesting
Wisconsin
stuff.
boy, so good for you.
Totally,
Gives you
totally.
a little backbone. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And our mutual friend, Richard Dodd, sent me over a photo of you guys running together in 1995. And it looks like
Right.
you just barely outkicked him at the finish line. It's a great
Yeah.
photo.
It's Richard found that, I don't sent me a copy, and I don't think I'd seen it. And
Oh,
yeah, we're both in our, gosh, I would have been, I guess, late 30s, 37. And Richard was in a great, and his podcast, a great marathoner. And he tells me he was coming back then. And I'm like, yeah, I kicked your butt. but, but yeah, I do remember that moment, because that was as much pain as I think I had at the end of a race, but I really wanted to beat Richard. So,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I got him by second or something like that. But I physically remember that. Oh God, that hurt.
Well, the time on the clock was 2:47. I wrote it down
Yeah.
because that's a pretty stout marathon time. So
Yeah, like I say, for being, I don't know, married, 3 kids, and just training Sunday mornings before dawn just to get a 20-miler. And, it was reasonable. I wish I would have done them younger. As you look back, as I said, in my youth, when I had time and ability, just never thought about doing that distance then. Just didn't dawn on me. So
yeah,
missed opportunity, but it's the way it goes sometimes. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're all full of missed opportunities, but that's okay. That's all part of it.
Right.
What's next for you? Do you have another book in the works? Something brewing in the head?
Yeah, I'm stumbling on one right now that I'm kind of stuck around 30,000, because it just sort of doesn't grab me as much. And so I don't know if I'm going to end up stopping. It's a fiction novel about sort of, I wouldn't call them hillbillies, but they live in a trailer, and a lottery comes into play. It's kind of a whimsical story in a sense, but it's also a commentary on life and greed and other things, but I can't quite get it going. And I just jotted down some ideas about another sort of a high school angst novel. So I had a dream, and I woke up and I jotted down some things. So I'm still working, getting, if I can formulate that. And I've had some things get in the way on a personal level, so I can't quite get to things in the moment. So I'm sure there'll be something. And again, when it grabs me, then I can just kind of take hold and get going on it. So,
Okay.
but I lately written a few things, even putzing around some song lyrics. I like that sort of thing also.
Nice.
Call it poetry, but just some ideas I had there too. So I have a band in the area that I want to get some of them to them. It's a beautiful female singer. She would be interested in, so there's something kind of going on, even though it's not a hardcore novel,
Yeah.
full length or things like that. It's just different things.
Cool. Well, that's the act of creativity right there. I mean, it's not always going to be what people want you to do. Like, I just finished this book, and from my point of view, it's like, okay, I want him to write the next book. What's the next book going to be? But you're the creative person. It's like, yeah, I just want to sit down. I want to write a poem. I want to, write some song lyrics. So there's nothing wrong with that. That's all part of the process, man. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's life. So where it flows all the time, but
yeah,
go with it. So
are you a musician as well?
I'm laughing again because in my old man state, my wife, I just last Christmas had her get me electric guitar.
Okay.
So I have that in a little amp, and we have an old barn that I've taken from time to time, kind of a few power chords, very badly playing, so I don't play music. One of my goals is to take some lessons as I get a little more time opening up to just start to learn. I did play a little bit of acoustic for a while, and then I put that aside. But I really just want to bang out some Ramones and just be stupid.
There you go. Yes.
Just play for fun. Just play some noise.
There's just one more thing we have in common, man.
Stage.
I love the Ramones, so that's just one
really?
we have in common. We got Tom Waits, Ramones, running, writing. We've got it all, man.
Yeah.
This is great. And we're both from Wisconsin.
That's funny.
Crazy. Well, that's cool, man. Yeah, I mean, poetry is, it's funny. Like, I'm not a huge fan of reading poetry, but I love writing it,
Do you? Okay.
Yeah. Are you kind of the same way, or do you enjoy reading poetry?
No, I don't really read it. No. And we going back again to music. I mean, I love some of the songwriters you mentioned if you're already like, but I go back to again, my era, Patti Smith, Pete Townshend, different folks that just the use of words and images and anger and whatever angst. And so I guess I feel like that's my listening to poetry versus I guess I suppose reading it. And so I on my Spotify list, if you make it, it means there's something special about it in my mind, anyways. That, and again, it may be songwriter. Sometimes it's just fun songs, but that's a motivating thing for me too. Or is that music on if I'm even doing chores or running something like that? That I think gets my brain stimulated as far as just the images created by, I'll call them poets, even though they may be musicians. They are, some of them are punk poets,
100%.
whatever you want to call them. They're special. They have special gifts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That works for me.
For sure. It seems like you're writing, and this is the only book of yours that I've read so far, but just from what you've said, it seems like you kind of fall into the young adult novel type of book. Do you feel like that's a genre that sort of calls your name? Or like this, it feels like this could be a young adult novel.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know that it was necessarily described that way.
Yeah.
And I hope that's not insulting in any way to you.
No. That could be there's some good things out there. I mean, that's a phase of life that's important and a market to reach, or people that, if I don't know how many of them kids read. Most I think are doing,
I know that's the
books,
thing. Right.
Audio books is what my sons listen to. And so actually I had some talk about getting this an audiobook. A friend of mine we were going to promote it and get it out there again, because of the time concept and the author, if he reads it, I guess it's more interesting to the reader. It's what I'm hearing. So
yes,
there's some possibility that I can do an audiobook, but it's a little bit, I guess I haven't pushed that button yet to get that going. One more project. So yeah, I mean, young adult it was one of mine. Two other ones I would say are much more adult. They're not really based on young. The current one that I just woke up with a dream was again about a youth. So maybe I bounce back and forth. Again, that period of my life that was harder for me just sticks, still resonates, is still part of me. Never, I guess, never goes away in a sense. So
yeah.
So again, if there's an idea that grabs me, then I just go with it.
Yeah. So, do you still have a connection with youth like that? Do you have kids of your own?
Yeah, well, I have 3 boys, 32 to 26, 25 actually, but and they're men doing their things. So
sure.
I did never coach. I mean, I look back and I woulda, coulda, shoulda, but besides, the grade school stuff with my kids, things like that, I coach, but never like high school coaching and having a direct link to running. So maybe this is my way to give to that, but not being a teacher, I didn't have the ability to really coach after school and things like that. My career just didn't allow me to do that.
Yeah.
But so I don't really in direct link, just with my kids, all the events and their friends and that kind of thing. But not clear cut that I haven't not belonged to any clubs or mentoring or anything like that.
Sure.
At least not anymore.
Yeah.
The future, who knows? You never know.
Yeah. It seems like a feather in your cap. It seems like something that you're good at. So, and back to the recording it as an audio book, man, I would highly recommend it because especially running books, man, people while they're out running, listen to running books like quite often. So I think that's another avenue to get this thing out there.
Yeah. I think you're right. It's just me getting that first step, and I need to retouch with my friend. He's and just see if I could do that. And we're going to do a sample chapter and kind of just see how it worked. And he had some mechanics that he knows how to do it. I think that is legit because as I talk to younger ones, my kids, even I don't read books, Dad, I listen to them, that kind of thing, which is foreign to me because I read, I don't really listen to books. So I'm just the opposite. I grew up with a book in hand. So it's just different where you're coming from. So
okay. Well,
we'll see. I mean, if I can get that done
I would recommend it.
And, well, if you got a good radio voice, how about you read it for me? Then
I don't want to read it for you. I mean, it would be an honor to read it for you, but it should be your voice. I think. I think it should be your voice that reads it. Yeah. I've read books by. I'm just trying to think of one as an example. Scott Jurek wrote a book. He's an ultra runner that lives here in Boulder, and he wrote his first book was called Eat and Run, and somebody else read it, and it just did not make sense.
It worked for you.
It did not work. Like Scott Jurek is sort of this really tough yet humble guy, and the guy
Right.
that was reading it was coming across like the humbleness wasn't there, the humility wasn't there. It was just the
Right.
tough guy macho thing, and it didn't sound like the author's voice at all. In fact, it
Okay.
just kind of screwed up the whole book, I thought. And
Yeah.
maybe that was just my opinion, but yeah, it
Sure.
should definitely be your voice, man, just to get all
Yeah.
the little inflections and the right things in the right places.
Yeah, like I say, I do want to sit down and see if I can get to that. I'd be interesting to see if that would to help just to get it out there. Be another avenue. That would be
Yeah,
interesting. So
100%. Yeah.
we shall see
Yeah.
where that goes.
And if you have more than one running book, man, like I said, runners love to listen to books while they're out on the trails. At least here in
Yeah.
Boulder, man, that's what a lot of people do. So yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, my trip, I biked through Boulder, so all I have is a recollection when I was, 20s, and that was beautiful and reminded me of Madison, Wisconsin, just in the mountains. It just
Oh,
kind of
that's what it
looked,
is. It's totally,
yeah,
yeah. It's Madison, Wisconsin in the mountains. I've said
yeah.
that too, man.
Have you? Just a
Yeah.
different feel, just felt free and open, and I don't know, just a different attitude there. It was pretty cool. Many
Yep.
years ago, but
Yeah,
all I
no, it's the
remember.
same way. It's very liberal, and the downtown area has a Pearl Street, which is similar to Madison State Street.
Right.
Yeah, they're
Yep.
very similar
Yep.
for
Yeah,
sure.
that was a mecca even back to when my day with Frank Shorter and Benji Durden, I think lives there now, but and he read my book too, but just different folks that are it's just the where people go.
Yeah, yeah. And so that was when you rode from Wisconsin to Arizona. You came through
Yes.
Boulder.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
gotcha,
Yep.
gotcha.
Yep. A long time ago, and just camped along the way, and just I don't know, just before my career, I got a business degree and then didn't know what to do and got a job in Arizona eventually when I hit there. So
Mhm.
just something I had decided to do. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
again,
every thinking young man has to have one of those adventures where you just kind of go out and just it's like you're just figuring things out for yourself, you know. You just
basically,
need to
yes.
take some time
Yeah.
for yourself, and
Yeah.
I totally dig it, man. Do you have a website?
No, I do not. I do
Oh,
not. Nope.
okay, okay.
Nope. I did used to have a blog in a sense, slash website. Didn't, I guess I didn't keep it going forever. So I do not.
Okay.
So really the books are, I through Facebook and other means, folks like yourself getting the word out. Had a review on Let's Run and other places like that too. A couple of smaller magazines. It really digital magazine, things. But so it's really just and some word of mouth
Hmm.
that sort of thing has been promoting. But I do not have a website. No.
Is there a place online where if someone were to purchase your book, you get extra money rather than on Amazon, you only get a percentage?
Yeah. Well, Lulu Publishing would be the character that's a direct publisher, LULU. Amazon is, obviously a lot of go-to for many of us just to click a button and it
Yeah,
comes in
so
a
easy.
couple days. But and yeah, that's awesome too. I mean, if they enjoy the work, that's the bottom line. It's not about cash. I mean, that'd be sweet, but it's not,
Yeah,
the main deal.
for
So
sure. Yeah,
yeah,
100%. Yep.
yeah.
Um, well, so cool, man. This was a fascinating conversation, and I love hearing about your writing process. All that stuff intrigues me, and I dig it, man. What's your running looking like these days? You said you ran 6 miles the other day.
Yep, just 6 yesterday. I haven't gotten out today. It's been Father's Day. We had my in-laws over, and I might I switch it up between treadmill, or we live by sod farms. There's trails here that I can go on. It's kind of open area. We're in the country, so I'll probably get in a little bit tonight yet, just a
Good.
few miles. I do have a duathlon next week, and they're small. They're not monstrous,
Mhm.
endurance events. They're hour plus, 2 hours, whatever it
Mhm.
might be. So just for fun, I have a 24 hours cycling ride in August, as far as you can go in 24 hours, going to
No
Michigan
way.
for that one. So
Whoa.
that's I'm endurance cycling. I can handle that. I can handle the endurance stuff, cycling better than running these days. So
Yeah, it's easier on the
so I'll do
body.
that one, and so that's on the agenda.
So is
So
that just around a loop course?
well, they do a 50-mile loop, and you have to finish at least 3 of them before a certain time frame. Then they have a night loop of 8 or 9 miles or something. So I hope to get a couple 100 miles, and we'll see where that ends up.
Oh, so
So,
that's
so
cool. That's cool. I
it's
like
not
it,
really
man.
a race. It is for some people. It's something. It's a event. We'll call it that. A
Yeah.
ride. It's not like you want to fall asleep for 2 hours. That's up to you. You do as far as you can in that 24 hours. So
Sure. Yeah. We're all just competing with ourselves out there. You know, it's
Yeah,
just all, like I've said before, it's all arbitrary. You know, you set these little personal goals for yourself and you try and check it off the list. I mean,
right. And
I
I
don't
hope your
think,
marathon went good this weekend. You didn't mention you can toot your own horn. You had a marathon, I think you said.
oh yeah, no, there's really no horn to toot. It's funny, man. I've been fighting allergies for the
Oh,
week, this whole week, and then my race was on Saturday. So yeah, I made it to the finish line, and but there's really no bragging rights there. Like I made it. It was a beautiful course. It was all
yeah.
alpine. You know, it's up super high in
Sure.
altitude. It was
Okay.
a legit course, but
Right.
yeah, I didn't break any land speed records, but I had a blast. So yeah,
Well, next month. There's always next month.
for sure, for sure. Every month there's something coming up.
Right.
Well, listen, Paul, thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate it. I
Oh,
absolutely loved your
for sure,
book,
Adam.
and there's so much like wisdom packed into this book too for runners, ultra runners. It doesn't really even matter what kind of running you're doing. You're going to be able to take something away from this book, like practical knowledge that you're going to be able to apply to your own running. And even if you were to take all the running away from the story, I think people would still enjoy the book. You know, there's a lot of life lessons in this book as well. So I don't think you have to be a runner to enjoy the book. Although if you are, I think it's just bonus points, and there's even more you're going to be able to take away from it. So,
Yeah. I
um,
appreciate you saying that because my intent wasn't to write a XYZ novel and as far as times and another training type, how many quarters he did. That to me, that's boring. If you want to
mhm,
think about it, to
yeah,
me personally, I want it to be about the layers of each of us,
yeah,
kind of a thing. And so I appreciate you saying that as far as the different levels you read it on. So
yeah. Well, I mean, if you strip everything down, really, when you start writing about a runner, or if you were to write about a writer, it's going to be pretty bland. It's going to be
yeah,
boring. You have to find ways to spice it up,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and you
true.
did that sufficiently in this book. And it was an exciting book. So you took what would be considered to be a boring subject and you made it exciting. So
Oh,
um,
thank you. I appreciate
have you ever
appreciate the word.
considered writing about a writer or writing about some of your adventures and stories and mishaps of writing?
No, no, I guess I haven't.
Okay.
I know there's many, I guess, movies I'm thinking about, the tortured writer kind of thing,
Right, right.
I have not, and I really haven't written a nonfiction either. I mean, at some point I thought, do a memoir, but I thought, I'm too boring to write a memoir about myself. But no, I haven't thought about writing about a writer because I know at least it's interesting, but that one just never
Okay.
dawned on me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
So,
Paul, this was awesome. I highly recommend your book to anybody listening. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one, whether it's, a year or 10 years from now. I'm looking forward to it. And and it's cool finding new writers too, because then you get to go back and dig into their old stuff too. So I'm looking forward to
yes.
that as well. So
Oh, interesting. Great. Yeah, let me know. I get a couple of things your way. I appreciate your
100%,
support here. So
100%. I love it.
yeah.
And thank you so much for the signed copy. I love it. If anyone else were to want a signed copy, how would they get one of those?
Oh, I'm sure they can contact you, but Facebook, that's again, I always feel old when I say that. My boys roll their eyes at that, but
You're not on
message me.
Snapchat or TikTok?
Yeah. Yeah. No, in the book, I think I have my email in the first couple of pages, I think.
Oh,
Because I've gotten people randomly email me. A guy from England just did that really enjoyed the book. So,
cool.
so yeah, that's the simplest ways to reach me. Send me email. I'd be glad to send the copy out. I did for him to a couple of his friends across the U.S., some coaches and things that he.
Okay.
So that's fine. That sounds great. I'd
Cool.
be rather
Cool.
happy to do that as a gift,
Well,
whatever.
yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, thanks again, man. Let's keep getting the word out about this book. I think people should check it out. And to you, man, just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, what an inspiration. I mean, you were a badass runner back in the day.
well,
You're still running.
yeah, I'm a
Well,
badass.
to me, you
But
were
thank you.
badass. I mean, come on. You were running some really fast marathon times and you're still at it these days. And
Still grinding.
oh,
Yeah.
I love it, man. It's like,
Yeah.
I love it. I love everything about it. So
Well,
yeah,
thank
keep
you.
doing what you're doing. And thanks so much,
I
man.
I
Appreciate
appreciate that, Adam. Thank you for your
Absolutely.
time and wish you the best. You come back to Wisconsin, look me up.
it.
Let's get
Okay.
in touch.
Yes. It was a pleasure, man. It's an honor having you on. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. We'll see you.
Take care of yourself.
Thank
Okay.
you. All right.
Bye-bye.